Race and Crime by Jonah Jackson, Nakia Griffin, and Mike Maietti. Race and crime is a topic of discussion that has been prevalent in our class this semester. Through further researching and understanding of the topic, we were able to find cases of how the justice system discriminates according to one's race.
Racial discrimination in the justice system is exactly how it sounds. It is how the justice system discriminates against minorities just based off their race alone. Racism can be seen at many different points in the justice system. An example of this would be seen is from police stoppings to incarceration rates, and all this is against people of color. So yet again, people of color are at a disadvantage in the justice system. That one would think this wouldn't even be in the discussion today. And now here's Jonah to explain the stats of offenses of each race.
Statistics of crime according to race. The main database that has information collected by the FBI on the crimes that have resulted in the arrest of the individual is done by the UCR, better known as the Uniform Crime Report. The UCR has statistical data that shows the certain crime in which each race has committed and the number of individuals who are arrested for the crime. Here shows data collected by the UCR in 2016 showing the amount of total arrests and the offenses charged. The offenses include murder and non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And on the right shows the number of the amount of arrests for each racial group that was surveyed. The number between whites and blacks are very similar, especially when it comes to the major offenses of murder and non-negligent manslaughter. And for the population of American Indian and Asian/Pacific Islander, the numbers were near identical. The UCR collects data from 18,000 different local, state, and federal law enforcement. Here, the three graphs displayed show the choices of victims by violent offenders according to the three main racial groups in the United States. The study that took place from 2012 to 2013 shows for Hispanic offenders, whites were 50% of their victims, and then fellow Hispanics follow white victims at 40%. For the whites, most of the victims of violent offenders were white people as well, making up a whopping 82% of the victims. Then for the choice of victims by black violent offenders, there are mostly black victims as well at 40%, with whites closing in at 38%. These graphs go to show that for the majority races of the population, that crimes committed by violent offenders are for the most part interracial. The staggering statistics of crime go to show that crime is not only one-sided, but all races commit deviant acts resulting in arrests. Although the number of individuals who commit these offenses from each racial group are staggering, the different punishments for each charged offense vary between races dramatically. Now here's Nakia to explain the differences of sentencing and punishments for each race.
We all live in this great country called America where every man is innocent until proven guilty, and every man is created equal. But how equally are we all treated? Unfortunately, there are many problems with the perception, treatment, and sentencing we have and give to the minorities and whites in our justice system. Looking here at this chart, you can see the incarceration rates between blacks and whites. For the most part, the numbers are pretty similar aside from the crime stemming from larceny, theft, drug violations, and drunk driving. But the crime I would like to put most focus on for the purpose of the presentation and my example of unfair sentencing between races is forcible rape. Forcible rape is a disgusting crime, and by no means shall any person who commits the crime be able to walk away from trial with a light sentence. Being a college athlete, we are constantly being educated through our coaches and Rutgers Health Services about the issues that are going on campus and ways to ensure that there is consent and avoid sexual assault, rape, and many other issues that are common on college campuses around the country. Here is Brock Turner, a former Stanford swimmer who forcefully raped an unconscious drunken woman behind the trash bin of a fraternity house in early 2016. And here are three Michigan State football players named Josh King, Donnie Corley, and Demetric Vance who had sexual relations with the same woman one night in a bathroom of a house party in early 2017. The woman claims she did not give consent and did not want to have sexual relations with any of these men and barely remembers much from that night due to her alcohol intake. She does remember agreeing going to the bathroom to speak to Mr. King in private, but she did not agree to have sex with any of the men. She was also recorded giving oral sex to all three men shortly after this night occurred, and that is when their trial began. These two cases happened within the same calendar year, but both cases were treated very differently in the court of law. Brock was only faced with 6 months in prison with 3 years of probation, but only spent 3 months in prison and was released for good behavior. The three Michigan State football players are still in trial to this day, while Donnie Corley and Demetric Vance are facing up to 15 years, and Josh King is facing up to life. It is clear to see that there's a huge difference in the way Brock Turner was treated in court versus the way Vance, Corley, and King are being treated. The sentencing was extremely light for the white Stanford swimmer who raped an unconscious woman versus the heavy sentence the three black men received for having sexual relations with the woman who was awake and claimed that she did not give consent. These aren't the only examples where black and white men have committed nearly the same crime and have been sentenced incredibly differently. There are many other times where sentencing between races have not been fair, and it is something that needs to be changed in our justice system. I also believe that the image we give off to our media outlets and public of different races play a key into their sentences. Whites are constantly being portrayed as innocent and non-violent, while blacks have images that give off more of a barbaric and thuggish feeling. A classic example of that is where George Zimmerman, who was notorious for killing an unarmed black pedestrian minor named Trayvon Martin. Although he was a minor and the victim, his image given to the media was much more different than the man who killed him. Trayvon had images that made him seem like a thug or a bad kid, while George Zimmerman was portrayed as an innocent and loving man, when in actuality he was a cold-hearted killer. The media does not do a good job in helping the issues we face as a country with the unfair sentencing differences we have for people of different races in this country. And if we have any hopes of changing this issue, the media needs to help us. A rapist is a rapist regardless of skin color. Sentencing should be determined solely off the crime. Sentencing should not be determined off the crime and the color of someone's skin, like it seems to be doing in this country. We need to stick to the Declaration of Independence, where it states that all men are created equal. As a country, if this is truly one of the core values and what we pride ourselves on, it's time to act that way and stop the disparities we have on people of our different races. And now here's Mike to speak on his viewpoint.
While discussing this topic, a question that kept popping into my mind was, is the justice system become racist, or has it been set up to fail this entire time? I believe the justice system, when being made, was an attempt to have everyone think that there is no favorites or anyone getting treated differently. But as the years go on and more situations occur, the discrimination in the justice system is more and more noticeable. So to answer the question, I believe that the system has been set up to fail the entire time because they never wanted the people of color to ever have the rights and equal justice as the whites do. Being a minority is hard enough in this country to make it, and now add the whole justice system discrimination into it makes it that much worse. Minorities are already at a disadvantage because of their stigma and color. Climbing the economic ladder is very difficult. Having a criminal record makes it that much harder to get a job. Colored people are discriminated against in the justice system in order to ensure that they will ultimately stay at the bottom of the ladder. The Kennedy School Review had an article that basically summed this all up into a sentence. Our criminal justice system works exactly as designed. Its original plan was to incarcerate poor men of color, which the criminal justice system does with painful intensity.